Hello, everybody. Sorry, I'm a couple minutes late. I probably should try to be more on time, I suppose. But hello and welcome to the Vickyverse tonight. Um, I have to do something a little bit different. The life has kind of taken over, and I don't have time to be editing a bunch of video up. So we're going to try something a little bit different today. And see how it goes. Uh, so tonight we will be discussing Jean-François Gariépy. I'm not even going to try to do the French stuff because I took Spanish in high school and I've never had to use French. I'm not even going to try to pretend. Uh, we're going to tell the story of JF and Mama JF. And it's sad, it's interesting, and it's very wackadoo. Uh, Before we do that, uh, we're going to follow up a little bit with Rekieta. I know everybody already knows it's been a while, but his sentencing has happened. Uh, the court signed off on it, and let's see here. I am gonna try to find it. I believe I pulled down the order itself. So let's see here. Did I boomer this completely? Not yet. Uh, Here we go. I think. Wait, we're gonna try this one more time. Yes! I knew I'd figure this shit out eventually. I tried to work out all the bugs, but you know, I kind of suck. So his warrant of commitment, we all know, third-degree drug possession of 10 grams or more of a narcotic other than heroin or fentanyl, and it was coke. Possession of ammunition and a firearm with drugs in the house, and child endangerment. So the offense that the plea deal was for was just for the drugs, the drug third degree possession, um, and his disposition is stayed. So if he completes his 5 years of probation, he does not have to serve 30 days in jail. But if he screws up somewhere along the line on his probation, he is in jail for a whole 30 days. He can't use drugs or alcohol. They can test him whenever they want. He has to show up for his meetings. He has to take some life skills courses because they make you take that shit. He has to get rid of the guns in the house. He has to get permission to leave Minnesota. So there's that. I know, it's not very exciting, but that's the way it ends, you know? We covered the beginning, we all laughed during the middle, and now we gotta say, hey, uh, poor Nick it isn't looking too good at all. This is it's a little sad. Um, I also read that our vice president somehow killed the Pope, which is weird, but yeah, not having another pope, the conclave has started. No, I'm not going to get into some big religious discussion. I had just seen it on Twitter before I started up the stream, and it reminded me of when I was a kid and the Pope died, and I believe it was the conclave that elected one of the Pope John Pauls. And it was so weird because it was on TV all day, probably for more than one day. My memory of that part's a little bit hazy, but I remember, passing by the television as my sister and I were playing and looking to see if the smoke had changed yet. Not really having any idea of what that really meant, but It was those times. Everybody talks back then about these big, like, national memories, right? It's not that we had national memories. We weren't all super touched by the stuff that happened. There were only 3 channels on your television. And every time something happened, it was all over the television forever. Now, heck, I don't even think people remember we're still bombing Yemen. So Nick was back streaming Karen Reed today. I am not surprised. Not surprised. I think he had made a mention of that. I saw something earlier in the week that he had. But it's probably good for Nick. He's off of Rumble. He's off of locals. They're like, dude, we can't keep these contracts going. And he's back on YouTube, so he's got to do something. He made a lot of money doing Depp and Heard, and I'm sure people will show up for his live streams just for the, train wreck factor. So it could be good for him, you know? Maybe he can make enough money to buy back his house. Who knows? I certainly don't. So, and then I guess that just brings us to the main event, so to speak. And that I have to load this up because, like I said, I'm trying to figure out a way to do this without OBS, but StreamYards can be really kind of cumbersome. So, yeah. Anyway, so here we go. JF. Jean-François Gariépy. I don't know how long you guys have been around in the YouTube space, but man, I remember JF in the skeptic community, right? It was sort of this pseudo-intellectual, well, self-styled intellectual offshoot of Gamergate. People like Sargon of Akkad, who infamously said of the politician Jess Phillips, I wouldn't even rape you, which eventually got him kicked out of UKIP and aborted his prenatal political career. You had the amazing atheist who once slid a banana up his ass on camera. Kraut and T. This weird German guy who, and the reason I brought up Kraut was because he's the only guy I know that admitted on the fucking internet that he butterfly filleted open his penis in some sort of accident with a hatchet. And then you had Coach Red Pill, Gonzalo Lira. He ended up tortured to death by a tranny in a Ukrainian prison after being arrested for spreading Russian propaganda out of Kiev. Man, rest in peace, you stupid bastard. And that was just some of them, right? I mean, there were more. There were little minor characters like that Spinosaurus kin kid who ended up, who was total MGTOW and ended up trooning out. Yeah, those were the fucking, man, it was wild back then. But JF received his PhD in neuroscience from the University of Montreal. He went on to do his postdoc at Duke University, which isn't too far from me here. It was long before I lived in North Carolina, but I'm glad I wasn't here at the time. He left Duke in early 2015. His stated reason, which was this incredibly long post on fucking Facebook, was about his kid was coming and he was just really disillusioned by the state of scientific research. You just had to spend too much money trying to get money to do your research. But, even though he was leaving Duke, he would still be doing his research and you could still watch him on the web. He ended up written up in Slate magazine in September of 2015 over it, right? He's not bitter, but his research, it had drifted away. His attention had drifted away from research academia. Well, no, dude. I doubt that's really it. But I'm not even sure that he was cut out for anything that, I don't know, kind of structured. Yeah. He seems really A-type personality, but mostly JF just kind of has to ride his waves. But yeah, Desert Nomad. This story is crazy. JF was always for insemination. Yeah, yeah. His views on women are appallingly Neanderthal, for sure, for sure. So after he left Duke, he ended up going back to Canada, of all things. So real quick, around this time, he'd become Andy Worski's co-host. Weird how shit just all frickin' ties back around, you know? Um, yeah, that lasted, I think, around a year or so, and then there was some big blow up. Uh, I don't, I don't quite remember what it was, but there was plenty of drama back then. Um, in that community, it was drama. It became just drama. Not unlike every other internet community. No matter what you say, it's actually about, right? It always ends up being about the drama. LawTube became about the drama. Comicsgate is about the drama. I mean, the sector itself is drama. It was nothing. It sort of gave us the template, right, of turning everything into drama streaming and react streaming and everything else. Uh, and this was the beginning times of the blood sports, right? Electronic ass whoopings on a regular basis. You had Medicare hovering around playing both ring master and matchmaker. Jarbo was bouldering, Spino tuning out. Ralph's kill stream was starting to go places, but that was before he got arrested and ended up in jail for a bit. Kind of paused his career real good. And it all culminated in that wrestling match between Worski and Tonka Saw that never fucking happened. Oh, it was so good. Like just watching it as a spectator was fantastically fun, right? But so after leaving North Carolina, he settled back in Prince Edward Island. Oh, this, of course, I'm sorry, I skipped. He had gotten divorced from his wife in North Carolina as well, about the time that he quit working at Duke. And so, of course, he lost any visa he had through the university, was unable to get a green card, and ended up getting divorced and moving back to Canada. After that gig with Worski blew up, he started his own channel and live stream called The Public Space. He married wife number 4, Little Miss Alora Peton. I'm not even going to try to say it. Apparently, she was a fan of the show who had contacted him while he was still married, but he told her that she'd have to be put on the waiting list because, of course, he is famously monogamous. You know, they had a kid. Things were going great with Mama JF. I mean, except for that one time, right, when she left. She just bailed for a few days and came back, but that was all right. They moved on. Everything was forgiven. They had a second kid. JF was getting to do what he enjoyed, man. He was hanging out online with the dregs of the alt-right, spouting about white supremacy, added it add to the mix a shit ton of misogyny. He was having conversations with Richard Spencer. Of course, he was hanging out with more Coach Red Pill because you got to get the MGTOW shit in there too, even though JF was married. It was the content is what some may call based, what I call fringe, but. But in June of 2023, despite the idyllic life that JF and Mama JF were leading, Mama JF left the house one last time. She was last seen at a gas station on June 17th, walking off into the wilderness with a backpack, and hasn't come back yet. But yes, yeah, his thoughts about ethnostate and women's rights are just fucking crazy. I don't even, I stopped listening to him because he went, well, actually, I take it back. I never really watched JF. I watched JF when he was still co-hosting with Worski, but never on his own show, because that shit's just fucking crazy. You know, um, he makes a point every time he talks about somebody of mentioning their ethnic origin. Women shouldn't even be allowed to leave the house without their husband's permission, and then only certain places. They're not allowed to go everywhere they want. It's fucking crazy. But so I told you guys about how he left Duke, and that wasn't quite what happened. Not really at all. I have to stop sharing this stuff. This is just a pain in the ass. The stopping sharing, adding sharing. So I have to share this screen. He had gotten, I told you about his divorce. Well, he lost big in that divorce. His wife got full custody of the kid with no visitation. Because it turns out JF wasn't just disillusioned with academic life. He was banging his undergrad lab assistant, trying to convince her to get pregnant, and even though he had a pregnant wife at home, I think he knew shit was falling apart and he was gonna need a new anchor, so to speak, in the United States, right? But the appeals, the decision from the appeal is just some crazy shit. They were only married for 6 months when the mother gave birth to their child. According to her, she did it anonymously, under a pseudonym, so he couldn't find her. And so there were actually 2 temporary custody orders, both of which granted the mom sole physical and legal custody and denied JF visitation. The court remained concerned over JF's ability to follow procedures associated with supervised visitation and his ability to follow court orders. He has not adequately addressed his mental health issues since the release of the evaluation. So what does that evaluation say? The father brings a number of arguments regarding the report from the psychologist who conducted the court-ordered evaluation of the father. This report was entered into evidence at the temporary custody hearing. In its temporary custody order, the trial court noted a number of recommendations made by the psychologist for father to follow. Nothing in the record shows. Father objected to the admission of the report at the temporary custody hearing. He did not appeal the custody order, which relied on the report. That the court-ordered psychologist, they've reviewed the father's arguments regarding, God, I can't even speak tonight. The report from the court-ordered psychologist included that the trial court did not commit reversible error in regards to matters pertaining to that report. The record shows that at the subsequent permanent custody hearing, the trial court did not specifically rely on the psychologist's report per se. So, the trial court made 59 findings of fact. JF challenged all of them that related to his relationship with the child and the mother. Now, at this point, he has not been near the child because she got immediate custody and he had no visitation. But apparently they have a great rapport, and yeah, I don't know how that all works. But he lost his appeal about the child custody, which was probably for the best. And that's when he ran off to Canada. But not, people, not before he made another friend. And that friend was a 19-year-old autistic girl in New Mexico that he met over the internet while he was screwing his undergrad lab assistant and his wife was pregnant, and he lured her to North Carolina in the hopes of getting her pregnant as well, because he must spread his seed. So, yeah, this poor young girl who apparently, according to the parents, according to God, that was stupid and ridiculous. So, oh goodness, I never added it to the stage and you didn't get to see it. I'm sorry. Yes. A Daily Beast article about JF. So he did. He decided he wanted to go after this child with autism, which JF says that she was the single most brilliant person he has ever met, next to his new girlfriend, of course. Which, yeah, what else is he going to say? He can't say was the smartest. But he will never admit, actually, that she was autistic. He just said she was a bit different, which is really kind of disturbing. So, her parents ended up having to go to court to get her away from JF. And they did that without JF being around because he didn't have to be. And so, of course, he appealed. I'm going to go ahead and go straight down to the facts of the case and skip all of that stuff. The guardianship proceeding was initiated by Ward's parents when the relator, that's JF, I'll try to say his name as I read this, lured Ward to his home in North Carolina to attempt to have a baby with her. Ward has been declared incapacitated by a qualified psychiatrist report included in the application for appointment in permanent guardian of the person. Real party in interest denies and challenges the facts in JF's statement of facts, most of which are contained in his own affidavit and are not evidence at all. Real party and interest asserts Ward is not and has never been JF's fiancée, that the young lady is not pregnant and there is no planned abortion. JF was trying to claim that the girl was pregnant, her parents just wanted her back so that they could force her to abort his baby. Of course, his sperm is strong enough that all it took was one, or however many times he was with her in the short time they were in North Carolina. But according to a Dr. Mark Thompson, the Ward demonstrates the social and mental maturity of a 10 or 11-year-old child. She has no comprehension of cause and effect relationships and often is known to have impaired decision-making. So he ends up losing his little New Mexican potato, which he assured us, and he assures us, despite her Hispanic surname, she was only like a quarter Mexican but looked white, so it was okay. Yeah. Yeah. I know. It's gross. It's just incredibly, incredibly gross. And I think I just accidentally closed my file. So hold on just a second while I find my drive file again, because I boomered and I accidentally closed the wrong window. I apologize. But yeah, so JF really likes women who are impaired in some way, shape, or form. And I guess it's a type, right? I guess. I find it kind of disturbing. But except for that lab assistant, there's no way that lab assistant was, having that kind of issue. But I don't know. I can't get this to share the way I want. Hello, Edwin. Nice to see you. I don't know how much longer I'll be at this, but because I'm almost done with the story of JF. So maybe this will work the way I want it to. Let's see. Yay, I fixed it. I think I fixed it. So remove, add to stage. Yay, I did. I know, I had to do this in a weird sort of way as I roll back down here. So, yeah, the alt-right YouTuber that was accused of luring an autistic teen in a pregnancy plot. And I just love what he says. The cost of female liberty, 50,000 policemen, full-time salary, nationwide searches. You could feed the homeless 1 billion times. Just take our society and just allow some degree of control by husbands unto their wives. Basic control of some little financial aspects, like, no, you won't travel to Peru. And so I'm going to decide for you that you won't travel to Peru. Just allow some form of control of husbands over their wives, and you're going to get events like Mama JF craziness here. Yeah. The craziness of Mama JF. It's not that she's missing. And the saddest, weirdest part about this is Mama JF was missing from June 17 of 2023 and wasn't reported missing until October. And it wasn't JF that called the cops. It wasn't her family that called the cops. It was a concerned neighbor who hadn't seen her. According to JF, she took her backpack because she was she was a woman of the streets. And she was just going back to the streets, and she'd get that wanderlust, and she'd just have to go. So he dropped her off at a gas station with a backpack and a couple of $100 and left her so she could hitch a ride with a trucker to cross a bridge, because the toll for the bridge was $50, and she was thoughtful that way. So he just dropped her off so she could hitch a ride with a complete stranger and make her way to God knows where. His coldness is crazy. I think I understand why her family didn't know. I think she was probably estranged from them. I doubt they liked him very much. I doubt they wanted her with him very much. And I would imagine that most of her days he controlled her and didn't really let her talk to her family. This is just me making guesses. I don't want JF to come rolling around, get all pissed off and say I'm lying, because I'm not lying. I'm just guessing. If he controlled his wife in the way that he talks about women needing to be controlled, then I can't imagine that her life was all that great. We were going to talk about this a few months ago on stream because the RCMP had put out a new notice because she's still missing. JF doesn't care. He's got his new girlfriend. She's a 10 out of 10 and the smartest woman he knows. And his kids, well, they're young enough. They won't care that they don't know their mother, because he's surrounding them with a new family, the 10 out of 10 supermodel girlfriend. Yeah. He also showed up on a live stream not too long ago, maybe about a week or so ago, maybe a little longer, called The Real Housewives of Alberta. They were doing a stream about, one of them is a private detective in training or something. I don't know, something weird and wacky like that. And they do this true crime stuff, and I guess she'd gotten interested in Mama JF, and they were doing a stream about it, and JF was just screaming at him in the chat, from the chat. And they did a stream where they brought him on, and oh my Lord. I'll let you guys go look for it. Maybe I'll link it in the description. All the documents that I have, I'll put in a Google Doc and I'll dump in the description sometime tomorrow when I have a chance. Real life might get in the way of that, so it could be a while. I don't know. But yeah. So they brought him on to talk about Allura. And the things that he says, like, he's a dick and cold and doesn't show emotion about what happened to Allura, because women are crazy. And she's just a crazy woman who ended up leaving and going off to do whatever her thing is. Yeah, because women are uncontrollable, and they need to do something about mental health care in his country. The media isn't trying to find the truth. They just want to obfuscate, and JF is the real victim. Yeah, he is still streaming. I know, which is just crazy. Well, what else is he going to do, right? He's in some little hole on Odyssey, though. That's all he's got, is streaming on Odyssey. He sort of fell off of YouTube, rolled through Rumble, and plopped down in Odyssey. It has not been a very favorable road for JF. A couple of months ago, he had a narrow escape. The cops came to see him. They came to kidnap him. Yes, they all came to kidnap him and strip his children away from him. But he managed to outwit them and ended up somewhere in Alberta, which was my guess when it first happened before he said where he was. But yeah, he ends up in Alberta after his harrowing escape of having to run through bushes and around houses and out back doors and through windows in the snow, uphill both ways, police dogs nipping at his heels. It sounds quite exciting, actually. Not. But I guess he went to go visit his family. He ran from Prince Edward Island to go visit his family in Quebec. Maybe the RCMP finally found the video of him admitting to replacing the sheetrock in the days after Mama JF disappeared, when he decided to go and clean the house instead of contacting anybody and letting them know she'd done a runner. But oh yes, because she contacted him, wanted to know if he was going to be okay and had all the passwords that he needed for any of the financial stuff, because they worked this all out in advance. She even went to her own lawyer apparently and signed shit away so that there would be no legal issues for JF to say claim the house that was in her name. I think I believe that she actually went to her own attorney. I don't think that she did it quite willingly. And I'm sure he probably told her it was for some time in the future. Convinced her, gaslighted her that she'd be taken off again like she always does. Maybe he convinced her to take off again like she always does, and then just offed her sometime in the afternoon after dropping her off. I don't know. They say I think there's cameras of him dropping her off at the police station. Or maybe she came back. Maybe she came home after a day. Or two. And that's when it happened. I could see that being the case. But who knows? All I do know is, in my opinion, Jean-François killed this pretty lady. Yeah. But, yeah. That's what happens. He's Canadian. Just crazy. He is just fucking crazy. But if anybody, to the, I don't know, handful of people watching and the handful of people that'll watch after, if anybody knows anything, contact the Prince District RCMP. I'll put their number in the description. So, that's all I have. It's been a rough couple of weeks, and things have been really busy around here. But I wanted to try and keep up on this. I said I'd do JF last week, and here I am. So, thanks everybody. Have a great night. And I'll see you next week. Oh, yeah. Friday, YF's Yellow Flashes book goes up for pre-sale. Comicsgate is already mauling, and that should be a fun watch over the weekend. I know I said I wouldn't talk about Comicsgate, but I might maybe add that into the mix of whatever catches my fancy over the next week. So, but good night, everybody. I know this is a short one. Her Vosges will be happy, and I will catch y'all later.